Barry Kislowitz, hosting Leadership Lenses, a podcast designed for principals, heads of school, Menahalim, Roshei Yeshivas, and anyone else who wants to lead, enhance, and build Jewish day schools and yeshivas. In 15-minute episodes designed for busy leaders, we look at one dilemma together each time, and we do our best to offer an interesting and hopefully helpful perspective. To submit a dilemma, message me on LinkedIn, check out Leadership Lenses on our Substack, or visit our website at www.kislowitzconsulting.com for more information. Today's dilemma is not going to be a surprise to any principal. I think just about all of us who have sat in the chair of the principal, the head of school, have really felt this, encountered this, and no doubt felt some level of challenge as we were trying to navigate it. So this principal was confronted by a teacher who ran into his office at the beginning of the period and said, Johnny, not his real name, is misbehaving again in my class. He is, pick your choice, throwing spitballs, turning over chairs, making comments, standing up, acting out, whatever it is. The bottom line is Johnny is not listening. And the teacher turns to the principal and says, Principal, I expect you to back me up. You've got to help me here. It's your job. I need to make sure that Johnny has some consequences. I need him to be accountable. And I'm turning to you, Principal, in order to help me do that. Now, at this point, most principals are probably squirming in their chair because they've taken a step back from the classroom. Principals were sitting in a chair in our office, which means that we're not quite as emotionally embroiled in what happens in every moment of every class. And so we can see from a step back that what Johnny is doing might not be that bad. And even if it is that bad, the consequence, punishment, anything else that the teacher's asking for may not ultimately be the best thing for Johnny or the best thing for the teacher, for that matter. And so we start squirming in our seat because we know on the one hand, we want to take a certain approach which is educational. We didn't get into this business to be in charge of punishments, in charge of consequences. We want to take an educational approach. And by the way, that word consequences, I love that word because for a long time, we use the word punishment. Discipline, punishment, that's what's happening. Along the way, there was a shift because it was no longer considered acceptable to say punishment. We don't punish kids. That's not something that we want to do as principals, as teachers, as educators. So instead, what would be appropriate is a natural consequence. Now, in theory, that made sense, but very quickly, I, as a principal, remember teachers coming to me and saying, I am going to consequence a child. And the moment you're using consequence as a verb of what you are going to do to the child, obviously it is not a natural consequence. You may say it is the natural consequence, but it's essentially another form of punishment. And so if the principal sitting there on the one hand wants to support the teacher, be a good supervisor, enhance the teacher's ability, work with the teacher, and on the other hand, be appropriate with the student, they're sort of caught in between these two conflicting desires. The teacher asking for backup, consequences, accountability, and the student who may need something somewhat different. And so what do we do? So again, I'm going to suggest an approach here, and you may or may not agree with this approach. The important thing from my perspective is that we think it through, that we take that step back, think about this in advance so that the next time we're encountering a dilemma, maybe we have a better chance of navigating it a bit more successfully than we did the last time. What I recommend doing is when that teacher comes in and they're angry and they're upset and they're frustrated and legitimately and justifiably at their wits' end because they've been spending day in and day out in this classroom with this child and they can't figure out how to manage it. The first thing you need to do as a principal is listen, empathize. And I don't mean that fake listening where you nod and say yes, but in the meantime, you're kind of writing down on your notepad, this teacher cannot control the classroom. I mean real listening, where you are curious, you're asking questions, you're trying to figure out what happened. Because when you start asking questions, and you'll notice this next time you do it, when you start asking questions, teachers will typically respond, and as anyone would, with broad statements. Well, so what is going wrong with Johnny? The answer is, he's disrespectful. Okay. Or he is poorly behaved. His parents don't take care of him. He's not responsive. He's not whatever other word you want to fill in there. These broad blanket statements which show frustration, but don't necessarily give you as a principal or them as a teacher much information. And so you have to push a little bit deeper. And this is tricky because you're not pushing as an investigator. This is not an inquiry where you're trying to catch the teacher, show that they're wrong, or anything else along those lines. You need to be asking the questions from a place of curiosity, from a place that says, as I sit here in my desk and you come into my office as a teacher, or as we meet in the hall or wherever else we are in a private place having this discussion, I don't yet understand what actually happened. And very often principals will just take a report at face value, jump to action, do something, and then realize 2 days later, oh, what I thought happened isn't exactly what actually happened. And often as a coach, I'll then get the phone calls. How do we put the toothpaste back in the tube here and figure out how to take a little bit of a different approach? But if you simply ask questions until you feel that you understand in detail what happened, you will be in a much better place. And again, it's not until you judge what happened. You are not passing judgment. You are authentically trying to understand what happened in the situation. Now, this accomplishes two things. First, as is clear, it gives you the information you need in order to give the best possible guidance in the situation. Second, if you do this well, it shows the teacher that you actually care, that you actually understand. And I've heard teachers say so many times, they're in the principal's office, they don't remember what it was like in a classroom, they just leave us to do the hard work. It might sometimes be cushier in the principal's chair. It's probably not cushier when you have an angry parent on the other side of your desk. But from a teacher's perspective, you may not understand, or they may think you don't understand. And asking those questions and pulling together that picture demonstrates a level of understanding and empathy that's the foundation for what's about to come next. Now, I'll say this next piece is much harder. So yes, asking questions and not seeming accusatory is a technique, is a trick, something you have to learn. But what you now have to do, if you have gained the teacher's trust, you appropriately demonstrated your interest, your empathy, your desire to really understand what's going on, you then need to try to turn the teacher away from the idea of discipline and consequence, away from seeing the student or the parents as opponents, as on the other side of a fight, and move that teacher to the perspective that probably got them into teaching in the first place. And that is, we want to help kids. We want to help them grow. We want to help them learn. We want to help them develop. And typically, being upset and consequencing is not the best way to get there. And this shift, again, has to be done very carefully so it doesn't seem to the teacher that you are not taking their side. What you're trying to convey is there are no sides here. If we look at this appropriately, we have a child who is struggling. Our job as the institution that is intended to educate this child is to figure out why they're struggling and what we can do to help them. And there may be many obstacles in the way. Reluctant parents, difficult situations at home, a child who has their own emotional, social, academic challenges that turn into misbehavior as well. And it may be, and I'll be very clear about this, it may be that at the end of the day, your institution is not the right educational environment for this child. And when we have to make that call, it's a difficult, challenging, but sometimes necessary call. But while the child is in your institution, and I'm going to assume for a moment in the vast majority of these cases, throwing a spitball doesn't necessarily get someone kicked out. If they're still in your institution, then you have the responsibility to do your best possible job in educating them. And the angry teacher has to be transformed by the principal to see this as a challenge to be solved. To look at this much as a doctor or a therapist might look at somebody coming into their office and say, okay, you're struggling with something. You're sick with something. This sickness may be causing pain to those around you as well, but I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to give you a lunch detention and assume that punishment somehow will enable you to conquer all of these challenges. I'm going to try to figure out what I can do to actually support you. And there are many theories and approaches once you have that shift about how to do it. I'll share one very quickly. An old one, William Glasser's choice theory, and there's a very short book called Choice Theory in the Classroom. I wouldn't say I agree with every page, but it's definitely worth a read. And the fundamental thesis is that children misbehave, children act out because they need something. They have a need, and it might be a need for entertainment or meaning or power or recognition or connection. Whatever that need is, it is currently not being filled in the classroom. And because it's not being filled in the classroom, children are very resourceful and they're going to find a way to fill it themselves. So just lay this on top of whatever discipline or behavior challenge you saw last. A kid is making comments and trying to be the class clown and get everybody's attention. Well, there might be a way to manage their need for attention from a different perspective. A kid is obstinate, refuses to cooperate, refuses to listen. There may be a struggle for power and control here, and the child may have a need for power and control for many reasons. Maybe there's a little bit of a chaotic environment in their home. Maybe they're struggling with a sibling or anything else, and so they're trying to take power and fill their needs in a negative way. And so we can approach it in a positive way. Now, I don't imagine these are miracle solutions. I do not expect that you'll try this 20 minutes later, perfect child, done. I know that I've struggled with many, many children who have various challenges, and you might not get there. But the challenge for us as principals is to bring the teacher around to a perspective that says, we are going to try to educate. We're not going to punish for the sake of punishing. We're not going to get into a head-to-head conflict and try to win. And we're not going to fool ourselves into thinking that somehow a detention will help a child concentrate more effectively. There may be times for detentions, don't get me wrong. There's times for all sorts of approaches, but they have to be within the framework of truly considering where the child is, how to educate, support, and help them grow, and obviously how to do so within the context of their class as a whole. That'll probably be the topic for another dilemma. How do we balance the individual's needs with the class? But I think we've done enough for today. Agree, disagree, hate what this suggested, love what it suggested. I'd love to hear from you either way. If you have different theories about how to do this, if you have a dilemma or a thought along different lines that you'd like to share, please feel free to reach out and contact us. You can find us on LinkedIn at Barry Kislowitz or Kislowitz Consulting. And again, you can reach our website, www.kislowitzconsulting.com. That's also posted in our show notes for today. And I do believe Google is smart enough to figure out how to get you there, no matter how you misspell the word Kislowitz. Have a great day and happy leading.